All right, everyone. Welcome today to our first official cooking at home lesson, which is on basic biscuits. They're also referred to as baking powder biscuits. And what I wanted to show you today, I have all my mise en place laid out, which mise en place, again, is the French term for put in place. And that means get everything that we need together so that we can complete our work. We don't want to run around and have to go grab equipment or supplies. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit again about the equipment and the supplies we will need today. For ingredients, we're going to need all-purpose flour. We're going to have some baking powder that we're going to utilize today. We have sugar. We have salt. And I have just a plain 2% milk that I'm using today just because it's what I had available. But also, if you can go to the store, you can purchase some buttermilk if you like. And then next time, we're going to get into how to make our own buttermilk at home. As far as equipment goes, the things that you've got in your kit, you have a teaspoon and a tablespoon measure that was provided by Anne Arundel Community College. And then we have this wooden spatula that we can use today also. I talked a little bit about a fork. We have a pastry blender. If you don't have that at home, don't worry. We talked in detail about that. Chef really doesn't care for these, and I'll show you again why I don't. I have something to level off my flour. I can just use a butter knife, but this is a little mini offset because it has that little bend in it. And then I have my dry measuring cup, and I'm using a biscuit cutter, but you have a PVC pipe that I included in the kit I sent home for you. And then I have a sifter and a bowl. Now, the first thing that a recipe tells us to do is to preheat our oven to 450 degrees. So that is the first thing that we want to go ahead and do with that. And then we're going to go ahead and start measuring our ingredients. So we're going to start off with our flour. Again, this is just all-purpose flour. You can change out the flour if you want. You can use, more of a whole wheat flour. It just depends on what kind of biscuit you're going for. When you go in to measure, you just want to go ahead and lightly take something to level it off with. And you just want to level that off just like that. You don't want to go in here and pack it tight. You want to keep it loose when you're leveling. So once again, I'm just going in real loose. And I'm going to level that off. That's going to go in my bowl. 1. And we need 2 cups of AP flour. Again, nice and loose, not packing it. And just level that off. All right, to get my equipment out the side. So I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. These are referred to as our dries. So I'm starting with my dries in this kitchen. Again, you have to have everything put in place in order to complete this. When we do get back in lab, you're going to complete the recipes within 20 minutes. So that's my first ingredient is my dries. Now, when you start off, you want to have these little cups that Chef gave you to use to measure. And that's to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. So my next ingredient calls for baking powder, okay? And it calls for 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And you can see I've got the measurer here. I go ahead and scrape off 1, and then I do 2. So 2 teaspoons of that, or 2 tablespoons of that. And I'm going to go ahead and cover that back up. So that way I know I've got my baking powder. In addition to that, I needed 2 tablespoons of sugar, and I needed a ½ teaspoon of salt. So I've got all my mise en place ready. I needed butter for the recipe, and I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the quantity of butter that was necessary, and I'm chilling the butter right now. So at home, you're going to have this 1 stick of butter, and this recipe calls for 6 tablespoons of butter in order to complete the recipe. So if you count through, each bar in a pound of butter has 4 ounces. We require each 4 ounces has 8 tablespoons. In order to complete our recipe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to slice it off right here, okay? You're going to put this other 2 tablespoons away to use somewhere else because butter's expensive. And then we're going to go ahead and cube this butter up just like that. And I'll do a quick demo for you. I just unwrap it. You can use a butter knife or whatever. You can use a little paring knife if you happen to have that. And I just gently slice it off just like this. And then I go ahead and work it through until I get it into little teeny cubes, just like Chef's doing. So a butter knife will work best. That way you won't cut yourself. That has to be chilled. You have to make sure that your butter is nice and cold and ready to go for our recipe. So we have our dries. I've got my flour. I've got my chemical leavener. I've got my sugar. I've got my salt. Okay, so we can reuse these cups. And then I get anything that I'm not using out of my way, okay? I've got my butter. And then our recipe also calls for 1/2 to 1 cup of milk. Now, I've measured 1 cup. Remember, you can always add, but you can never take away. So we want to make sure that we only add a small quantity. Again, if you have buttermilk, you can go ahead and use buttermilk. Right now, I just want to get through a basic biscuit. We can get to that later on, but for those of you that didn't see the demo, you can see that the buttermilk comes out super thick and chunky. You can hear it splashing and gooey. And that's the acid that's created when they add a vinegar to that. So buttermilk or regular milk, you'll hear them referred to as buttermilk biscuits. All these ingredients get sifted. You can have a small sifter at home. I'm not sure what you've got to utilize at home, but I did want you to see a method that we use in the kitchen. You have a sheet pan because we need something to put our biscuits on. I've got parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, then you go ahead and spray it. Something cool that we do in professional kitchens with our parchment paper that I wanted you to see is that we go ahead and we take our dries and we can sift our dries right onto the parchment paper. And you can see Chef's going to do that in just a minute. And what I do is just take my hand and I gently sift. Now sifting, as you can see, you have all those big chunks. So this is why we sift. We don't want those great big chunks in our biscuits. So we sift our product. It takes a little bit of time. You just go ahead and sift it all through. And that's going to make our biscuits light and fluffy and airy. All right. When you get to the very, very end, if you have those big chunks like that, you're just going to take your fingers and you're going to push that little bit through. So we want to sift. If you don't have something to sift with, it's okay today. We're still going to push through and go ahead and complete the project. Okay. So again, sifting all this, you can use, sometimes you might have, grandma might have a handheld sifter. It has like a little button you push on it, anything like that just to help aerate it. And you can see how it just makes everything nice and light and fluffy. Okay, again, I got a little bit on the bottom. Just gonna get rid of that, get my sifter. Now here's the cool trick. You got parchment paper, you pick it up by all 4 sides and it goes right back in the bowl. And then you reuse the parchment paper. So this is something we do in a commercial kitchen all the time. So we've sifted our dries together. Now we're going to cut in our butter. This is that butter that we cubed up. We're going to dump that in. A chef's best tool is their hands. So you can do it in a variety of ways. You can use your hands to cut the butter in, okay? And you're going to work that in. Again, this is going to take some time, about 5 minutes to incorporate it fully. And we want it to look like little pebbles, all right? We want to have that flakiness in the biscuit, so I can just sit here and work it and using my fingers. Alternately, I talked about using a fork. If you want, you just take the fork, just like Chef's doing, okay? And then you work the butter in that way, just rolling around with the fork. Now, if you do have a pastry blender, that's what this is, the pastry blender, you can go ahead and use that and work that in that manner. Now, this is why I want to demonstrate why I'm just not a particular fan of a pastry blender. I just haven't cared for it, and that's because everything gets all stuck into it. So if I was going to do anything for you for the first time, what I would strongly suggest is just use your hands, because you're going to get the best product out with your hands, okay? So we're going to take that, let me get that out the way, working that flour in with my hands. All right, taking my time. How do I know if it's done? I'm going to lift it up, and if the chunks are too big like that, you can see that I need to work it a little bit more. I need to incorporate some more. Okay. Again, this is the point where you're just going to have to take some time. You have to be patient. Now, biscuits, once we're at this point, we're not overworking it. We've got the dries. We're cutting in the butter. Remember, that's the technique. Cutting in the butter. All right. You can see that it's starting to get a little bit more fine with my crumb. And again, just using my hands, sweeping the side of your bowl, whatever kind of bowl you might have at home. It can be any kind of bowl. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue to work this just a few seconds longer. All right. All right, so now I'm good. You can see I've got little butter packets incorporated in here, all beautiful, ready to go, no huge chunks. Now, this is the point where we're going to get to where we slowly add in our milk. 1/2 to 1 cup of milk. You have your wooden spatula that you got given to you in your kits. If you don't have your kits, I hope you have one at home. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at our measuring cup. It says 1 cup. We're going to start off with just 1/2 cup, okay? Just 1/2. Remembering, we can always add, we can never take away. And I'm just going to use that wooden spatula and stir this product up until it's moistened, okay? So I can see that it's really dry. Now, It's raining today, so humidity can impact our products. So that's something you want to be aware of. Again, you can always add, you can never take away. I'm adding just a little bit at a time, and I just want to get it to the point where it binds together. This is the point where I want to be gentle, and I do not want to overwork that dough because I don't want a tough biscuit. I want a nice, flaky, soft biscuit. When we start on our second portion with biscuits, we're going to add some ingredients like garlic and like cheddar cheese to our dry. So we're going to add things in and teach you how to take this simplistic biscuit recipe and just completely alter it and change it. So I can see right now I'm holding together, my dough's holding together. I'm going to go ahead and sweep off that beautiful little spatula. I'm going to take a little teeny bit of flour, not too much, I don't want a lot. And I just want to flour the line. See how I'm just gently sprinkling, just gently sprinkling. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull that dough right out of that bowl. All right, beautiful. Got that dough all ready to go. And then what I'm going to do now is use my hands. Now, you watch some videos. Some people might use a rolling pin. The hands, at least initially, are the best thing we can use. And you can see I'm just kind of patting it into the thickness. Now, you don't want it real thin. We want a biscuit, not a cracker. Some people like huge biscuits. I'd say about a 1/2 inch should work. And you can see where Chef's going ahead with that. And you can see the butter pockets in here. So these beautiful pockets of butter are what's going to give it its light flakiness, and that's going to make a beautiful biscuit. Now, when we start off with the cutter, we want to make sure that we have just a small amount of flour on our line or our table right there. And I'm going to take that cutter and I'm going to put it in that flour, and that's just so that it doesn't stick because I don't want the cutter to get all stuck. You notice I had some milk left over. I didn't need all the milk. So if I had put that all in, this would be a runny, ooey gooey mess sticking to my hands. So it wouldn't work. Now, you don't want to start cutting in the center. You want to start on the edge so that we don't have to rework the dough. And what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to take your hands, you're going to press down, and you're going to twist until you can pop out a beautiful biscuit just like that. And that biscuit's going to go right on our sheet pan, ready to go, okay? Do the same thing again. Cut, push it down, twist and turn. Now, I made huge biscuits just for time's sake. You should get at least 6 to 8 biscuits out of this. Again, a little bit of flour, push down, twist, and then one more biscuit. Now, you take this other dough. What do, Chef? You just form it back into what we had before until you can get some more biscuits out of it. Now, you don't want to waste it, okay? Pressing down, turning. So these I made huge. So anywhere... It could be 6 to 8 biscuits. And then if you have one that's not exactly the same size, that's okay. This can always be your tester biscuit or something that you eat. Now, when you listen to the recipe that Chef gave, or look at the recipe, which is in your recipe folder, don't forget, in Schoology, everything we do is going to be in our recipe folder. All right, so this one's he's just our little leftover guy. All right, you spread them out. If we were using a convection oven, you would want to spread them out so that the parchment paper doesn't fly up in the air. And then the end result of our recipe says to go ahead and brush the tops with butter. So if you have a pastry brush at home, it's a pastry brush, that's great. If you don't, once again, a chef's best tool is their hands. And you'll notice I just take my fingers, a few fingers, and I lightly brush the tops of these beautiful biscuits with some milk. Now, why do I do that? Because it's going to help to brown them. It's going to give them some coloration so they don't look bare white. Now these are going to go in the oven. You're going to set a timer and you're going to watch these biscuits, and we want to bake them until they are golden brown. So parchment paper I'll get out to you eventually. You can see the mise en place is all set up. I only use this because I was getting some background light to try to get some color. So these are our basic biscuits from scratch. I'm going to put these in the oven, and then I'm going to come back and show you how things turn out once we're finished with it. Okay. Alrighty, hold on, let Chef finish this.